Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Truckbuster's Garage. Except for we're not in the garage, we are actually in the dining room because it's cold outside and dark. So, I wanted to take you through today one of the cool pieces of old technology that I found on the 86 Bronco while I was redoing the exhaust. This thing is a temperature controlled, vacuum actuated exhaust heat control valve. I had to write it down so I wouldn't forget what it was called because that's a mouthful. Okay, basically this thing is a butterfly valve that is controlled by a vacuum, which is controlled by the heat coming from the engine. So what this thing does is it's bolted to the downpipe on the driver's side or left-hand side of the engine, and so it will be closed when the engine is cold, and it'll open when the engine is warm. And so I'll show you quick. So you can see it's a cute little butterfly valve. It's very small, only about 1.5 inches across maybe, and it's pretty beat up. This is the one I pulled off of the Bronco. And so what happens is when this thing is cold, it's closed, and this is the part that actually sits against the downpipe. And so what happens is when this thing's cold, it's closed, and it'll go and it'll close, and it'll circulate the air back to the intake side of the air system, which is kind of weird because it's just basically feeding the engine its own fart by keeping this closed and not allowing it just to escape out the exhaust pipe. And so it'll circulate this through again to the intake side. So it's warm air going into the engine now, which is nice. It helps it heat up a little bit faster. And also it's reducing the emissions on the vehicle by feeding that unburned fuel, because it's cold in there, so it's not getting up to the right combustion temperature yet. It's feeding that unburned fuel back into the engine and burning that. So it's reducing emissions. But also this is a little bit bad for the engine because you're basically feeding the engine old, dirty air. And so there's some hydrocarbons in there, there's some soot in there sometimes, and that gets in your engine, and that's actually not super good. So when the engine is warmed up, this valve will open and let it go through the exhaust pipe and escape the engine, and then the engine will breathe normally, and you won't be breathing dirty air when your engine's warm. Only when you're cold. Way to kick a man when he's down. So this thing is opened by a little vacuum actuated valve right here. So the vacuum line goes into this end right there, and then this thing goes up and down right here and goes onto this little lever right here and turns it up and down like that. And that's really cool. So this vacuum line will create a vacuum when the engine is running at operating temperature. And the vacuum pumps are really cool. I really recommend looking into the system. So I have here a Haynes manual for pickups of my generation right here. And then this is the emissions chapter. This is where I learned all about this thing. I'll put some pictures of this thing in there. But yeah, so that's where I learned all this stuff. There's this thing that I learned in school. It's called RTing the F&B, or reading the freaking book. So if you don't know something, or like something looks funny, or you don't know exactly what it is, go find a service manual, because it's really useful to actually know what it's called, what it does, how it works, how it's supposed to be hooked up right. You can find torque specs in these things, all sorts of specifications. And you're just like, hey, I want to go and just kind of wing it, and it'll put itself together. Yeah, I used to be like that, and I broke a lot of stuff. My dad was not happy. My boss was not happy. But ever since I started reading the book, I'm actually like learning a lot more stuff and learning a bit more about how the engine works and how these things actually like are supposed to be put together and how not to break them. I'm pretty excited about that one. Breaking stuff is expensive. But now reading the book and learning how to actually do it properly is one of the things I recommend for anyone who's starting out as a mechanic, or actually like is a mechanic anyways. And you get pretty good at it. By the end of it, you start memorizing the book. And sorry for that little tangent, but thank you so much for watching. I'll try to keep going, try to do these weekly, and just make sure I post something every week so you can keep up with this. But I'll see you guys later.